Check out this segment from the most recent episode of the Attack the Rack podcast. In this episode, we talk with DJ Van Hekken and DJ Greg Rios. In the description, you can find a link to the entire interview and also a link to tickets to the Old School Bash. Let's now segue into this Old School Bash.
Park Theater.
At Park Theater. Downtown Holland, Michigan. How long have we been doing these?
This is our 13th year, I believe. I think we started them in 2000.
And we've done anywhere from 1 to 2 or 3 in a year. So we've probably done a good 20 of them.
At least, yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Those of you that are in the West Michigan area, it's in our age, 30s, 40s, 50s, probably 60s now. It's a night that you don't want to miss. And it's interesting, Dan, you brought up what old school is to you. I think for the three of us, we're all from the same era where we would probably consider 80s and 90s old school. And I think when we started this event 13 years ago, 80s and 90s was old school to us. But now, 13 years later, over a decade later, now you do start to throw in a new decade into what old school is, and you start to look at early, even mid 2000s. So we've been doing this event for so long, we've now pushed into a whole new decade of what would be considered old school.
I remember a few years ago somebody asked me that, they're like, well, what's old school? I was like, you know what? That's a great point, because it's different for certain people. So we had to specify 80s, 90s, and now, like you said, early 2000s is our definition of old school.
Right.
And I remember the three of us having this conversation several years ago about, hey, it's time to start sneaking in some I would say newer, but still 20-year-old tracks. And we all agreed that we'd still slowly do that. And there were times where I remember we would, before that, Dan might play Missy Elliott or, another early 2000s, but it's not 90s. Well, hey, the crowd likes it. It's all really understanding the audience. And as this event has grown and gone through the years, there's been a shift in who's going to those events as well. Now there's a younger generation who late 20s, early 30s who consider early 2000s as old school. So we had to make that adjustment.
If you think back when we started this, where did that idea come from? Does neither of you guys remember?
We had talked about it for a long time about we should do a party and make it like one of these old house parties that we used to have in high school. We went all out. I mean, we got lanyards. We thought we were fancy. And word spread, and there was a few hundred people that first night.
Yeah, we had no idea what to expect.
We had no idea.
I think we were like, if we get 50 to 100 people, this will be sweet. And we were at capacity, which I think it's 300.
Yeah, we wanted to keep it low cost. We wanted, again, like if you were going to a party in the 90s, we wanted it to be like that. But that's where the idea came. It was all of us just kind of dreaming, and then
it's really cool how it happened. Actually, I mean, we all kind of went. We stayed connected, obviously, but all kind of went our separate ways as DJs for a few years. Learned the craft, and then obviously kind of had, like Greg said, I had this idea for probably a couple years, and kind of staying true to our roots. And we're like, this is why we fell in love with DJing, and so now let's throw a party at a legit place. Park Theater was that place, and here we are.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, Dan, we used to go and just jam in your garage, and I think that's part of where those conversations started. And it was always just kind of a joke, but also kind of a wish as well. Like, we should throw a big party. And this is when we were kind of trying to give each other gigs or help each other out with our gigs and stuff too. So it's kind of like,
and let's be honest, Holland is not known for its nightlife and some fun. We wanted to give back to the community.
And we did Temple.
Those garage days and those offices were like, we need to make something happen.
Yes.
And now 13 years later, we're still doing it. Nearly every show has been a success. There was one flop And that was
Oh,
in January, similar to this next one we're doing January 7th, in the month of January, and there was a massive snowstorm that night. But we just loved the music so much, and we didn't want to cancel. And you know, obviously it was a blizzard that night. Very few people were able to get out. Totally understandable. But then it's like, man, that makes you nervous doing them in January. But the great news is, Saturday, January 7th, not a flake in the forecast. Not an ice drop in the forecast. It's going to be a beautiful night, beautiful weather.
You know, the funny thing, though, that January, I think we had 75 people, and to us that was a flop because almost selling out all of them before that. But our biggest show was also in January when we sold out with 400 people, and they had to turn away over 100 people at the door.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
Was January 3 or something like that. It was,
yes.
It was the first week in January.
Yeah, you're right.
It
It's about that too.
19, I think it was, right? Or
yeah, you're absolutely right. And I remember too being a little nervous. Like, are people going to come out? It's so close to New Year's. And boy, did they ever.
so sorry if you got turned away that year, but you have another opportunity.
Yes.
January 7th.
Yeah, January 7th, this coming Saturday, Park Theater, downtown Holland, Michigan. Guys, what time do the doors open?
8:30 doors.
8:30. And then for people that want to get tickets, how do they get the tickets?
Several ways to get tickets. The Park Theater online. They're through their Facebook. On the event page, there is a link to ticket sales. You can also go to the Park Theater's box office during their hours to get them. And Latin Americans United for Progress, LAUP, their office also is selling tickets because part of the proceeds from this event are going to go to support them.
And you can take the risk and try to get them at the door. But more often than not, these shows do sell out. So if you're going to take that risk, you might not have an opportunity to get in the door.
Right.
But there is that opportunity.
You're absolutely right. But that doesn't mean the day of, if you're like, I wish I could go, but I'm not going to go because I'm worried it's sold out. Still check online to see.
Yeah, still go online and get them. Yeah, absolutely. We've had a couple special guests too, in addition to the three of us at the Old School Bash.
Yeah.
I know one of my favorites was DJ Psycho out of Flint, Michigan. And Dan, you mentioned, when we've been talking about the whole technology thing in today's world of DJing, that night, I don't know if you guys remember, we took him out for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And he said something that really stuck with me. He said, and he's a total old school, turntables, records, no technology, no computer, none of that. And he said something that stood out to me. I figured he was going to say something, bashing Serato or bashing the technology. And he said, you know what? If what comes out of that speaker sounds good, that's all that matters.
So true.
He did a great job. He put on a great show. Who are some other of our special guests we've had?
We
had DJ Heavy.
Yes.
Heavy is now, he's a big DJ in Chicago now. He was in West Michigan. He had a heavy presence, no pun intended, on one of the local radio stations. He came out and he rocked it. He was probably one of my favorites that came out.
Still to this day, one of my favorites. Yes. He's doing great things. DJ LA.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kalamazoo area. Does a great job.
Had someone most recently last year.
DJ Ryan Henry. Came out and did one. Had a good time with him.
Funky Felix.
We had Felix, Funky Felix,
local legend.
Yeah.
Yes, he's actually he helped me in my early days as well with mixing and scratching and going to his house and learning. Just like Joey. Joey was a guest DJ in them as well. Yeah, so he rocked it out.
All right, but this coming Saturday, it's back to the three of us, just as it started with the three of us, and it's gonna be a great night. Can't wait. Looking forward to it. Please subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share.